My name is Elise. At my brother's engagement party, I was handed a paper plate with cold leftovers while everyone else was seated at a candlelit table. My future sister-in-law leaned down, smiled like she was doing me a favor, and whispered, "We kept it casual for you. You always seem more comfortable that way." I didn't say a word, but I had my laptop in my bag, and I had already decided that tonight, before the champagne toast, I was going to open it. Let me go back to the beginning. The invitation came through a group text, not a card in the mail, not a personal call, a group text that included my brother's college friends, his coworkers, his gym buddy, whose last name I didn't even know. I was listed somewhere in the middle. "Hey everyone. Nathan and Priya's engagement celebration. Saturday the 14th, Rosewood Manor, 7 p.m., dress smart." That was it. My mother sent a separate message 10 minutes later. "You're coming. Don't be difficult." I had learned a long time ago that in this family, being summoned was the closest thing to being invited. I drove 40 minutes in Saturday traffic. I wore a navy dress I'd bought for a client presentation, fitted, professional, the kind of thing that says I take this seriously. I walked into Rosewood Manor and immediately understood that the seating arrangement was going to tell me everything I needed to know about the evening. The main hall was warm and gold, round tables draped in ivory linen, low floral centerpieces, candles everywhere. It looked like a page out of a bridal magazine. I found the place card table near the entrance and searched for my name. It took longer than it should have. Most guests were at tables 2 through 8, clustered near the center of the room, near the dance floor, near the bar, near the couple. I was at table 11. I had to ask a staff member where table 11 was. She hesitated, then pointed toward a narrow alcove near the service corridor, half hidden behind a standing floral arrangement that was clearly meant to block the view from the kitchen. There were 4 chairs at table 11. 2 were occupied by people I'd never seen before, a distant cousin of Priya's and her husband, both of whom seemed equally confused about why they were there. The 4th chair had no name card at all, just an empty seat with a folded napkin and no water glass. I sat down and placed my clutch on the table. Across the room, I could see my mother. I'd started calling her by her first name in my head years ago, though I never said it out loud, standing near the entrance in a deep burgundy wrap dress, laughing at something. One of Nathan's friends said. She looked radiant. She always looked radiant in rooms where she was the center of everything. My brother Nathan was beside his fiancée, Priya, both of them glowing, in the specific way people glow when the whole world is arranged around them for one night. I didn't begrudge them that. I never begrudged Nathan his happiness. He was kind to me in the way people are kind to someone they've been quietly told is fragile, gentle, brief, never too close. The waitstaff moved through the room in slow, graceful loops. Brushed silver trays, bites of seared tuna on ceramic spoons, miniature crab cakes, a charcuterie board that appeared at the center tables like an edible sculpture. I watched 3 different servers pass our table without stopping. When one finally did pause near table 11, he set down a small bowl of mixed nuts and a bread basket with 2 rolls, already slightly cold, and moved on before I could speak. I picked up one of the rolls. Set it back down. That was when Priya approached. She was beautiful in a way that read as effortless off-white wrap dress, hair down, a single thin gold necklace. She'd always been polite to me, the way someone is polite to a receptionist. Functional courtesy. No warmth underneath. She crouched slightly beside my chair so we were eye level, which felt performative, and she said, "We weren't sure what your dietary situation was these days, so we just kept it simple for your end of the room. Less overwhelming, right? You always seem more comfortable low-key." I looked at her. She smiled. "Nathan said, you've been going through a lot. We just wanted you to feel at ease." Then she stood, smoothed her dress, and glided back toward the center of the room. And I sat there holding a bread roll in a dim alcove behind a flower arrangement with a table that had no water glass. I knew what she meant by a lot. She meant my work. She meant the fact that I was a freelance graphic designer who worked from home, which in this family translated to no real job. She meant the fact that I had turned down a position at my father's old firm 3 years ago, the one my mother had arranged without telling me, the one I only found out about when I showed up for what I thought was a networking lunch and discovered it was actually an interview. She meant the fact that I had said no to that job and no to moving back to the suburb where I grew up, and no to a dozen small suffocations that everyone else in this family called opportunities. I opened my clutch and touched the edge of my laptop, not to do anything, just to feel it there. I want to tell you about Thanksgiving 4 years ago, because that's when I stopped telling myself I was imagining things. I had driven home for the holiday with a portfolio tucked under my arm. I'd just finished the branding package for a mid-sized nonprofit in Philadelphia, clean and modern, the kind of work I was genuinely proud of. I wanted to show my mother. Not for approval exactly. More like evidence. See, this is real. What I do is real. She was in the kitchen when I walked in, already deep in conversation with Nathan about his promotion. I waited. I set the portfolio on the counter. She glanced at it once, then looked back at Nathan and said, "So walk me through the benefits package again." After dinner, I found the portfolio on the floor near the coat closet. Someone had put it there to make room for the bread basket. 3 weeks after that, a client I'd been building a relationship with for almost a year went quiet. No reply to my emails. No returned calls. Then a mutual contact told me carefully, gently, the way people deliver bad news they didn't want to know that someone had reached out to him. Someone had mentioned that I was, and I remember the exact phrase, professionally unreliable and prone to disappearing mid-project. He couldn't tell me who, but he didn't have to. My mother had met that client at a Chamber of Commerce event 6 months earlier. I remembered because she'd mentioned it in passing, the way she mentioned things she wanted me to know she knew. Oh, I ran into David Cho at the Ridgewood breakfast. Lovely man. We talked for quite a while. I had no proof. I want to be clear about that. I had a pattern, a timing, a sick feeling in the base of my chest that I had learned, over years, to take seriously. But I had no proof until 2 months ago, when I was clearing out an old email folder and found a forwarded message I'd missed. A former colleague had sent it with the subject line, "Thought you should see this." It was a screenshot of an email chain. My mother's name was in the header. The client's name was there too. The body of the email said, "And I will not forget this, as long as I live. Elise is talented, but she's going through some personal instability right now. I wouldn't want that to affect your project. I'd hate to see you caught in the middle of a difficult situation." Personal instability. I had stared at that email on my laptop screen for so long the screensaver came on. I didn't call her. I didn't forward it back. I saved it to a folder, and I sat with it for 2 months, turning it over in my mind the way you turn over something that reframes everything that came before it. And then the engagement party invitation came through a group text, and I decided that if I was going to go, I was going to go prepared. Back at table 11, the evening was moving forward without me. Toasts were beginning at the center of the room. Nathan's college roommate gave a short, funny speech that made everyone laugh. Priya's older sister gave one that made people cry. My mother stood up next, uninvited, apparently. But no one stopped her, and spoke for 4 minutes about sacrifice and unconditional love, and the family she and my father had built, and I watched people at the surrounding tables nod and smile, and I thought about the word unconditional, and how differently we must define it. She did not mention me once. I opened my laptop under the table. Not to check email. To review what I had prepared. 2 weeks before the party, I had started keeping notes. Not aggressively, I wasn't looking for a fight. But I had the email. And I had a voicemail my mother had left me 7 months ago. During the week, I was supposed to launch a rebrand for a small restaurant group. She'd called to tell me the launch date conflicted with a family reunion I hadn't been invited to, and that it would look bad for me to be working when everyone else was gathering, and that I needed to consider how my choices affected the family's image. The launch had been scheduled for 8 months. I had redesigned my entire timeline for a client around it. I postponed it by 10 days to avoid the conflict. The client was understanding. The restaurant opened quietly. I never got the referral that was supposed to follow. I also had a text thread, Priya and Nathan's, which I was accidentally included in for about 48 hours 3 months ago before someone removed me. I had seen enough. A message from Priya to Nathan. "Does she have to come? It's just going to be weird." His reply. "She's my sister. Just seat her somewhere comfortable." And then Priya again. "Fine. But I'm not redoing the whole layout for her." Somewhere comfortable. I looked at table 11. At the bread basket. At the absent water glass. at the decorative floral arrangement blocking us from the view of the room. I thought about the word comfortable for a long time. My mother was finishing her toast, pressing a hand to her chest, and saying something about the family we choose. She looked directly at Nathan when she said it. She did not look at me. I closed the laptop, stood up quietly, walked to the presentation table near the side of the room where a staff member was managing the evening slideshow, a loop of engagement photos set to soft music. I waited until he had a moment, then leaned in and told him I had some materials I needed to add before the final remarks. He looked uncertain. I told him my name, told him I was the groom's sister, and handed him a USB drive. It's already formatted, I said. Just follow the same setup as the photo loop. I'll give you a signal. He looked at me for a moment. Then he nodded. I walked back to table 11, and I sat down and I straightened my napkin and I breathed. I want to be honest with you. I was not calm. My hands were steady, but my pulse was not. This is not something I had done before. I had spent most of my adult life being the person who absorbed things, who went quiet in rooms where I should have spoken, who drove 40 minutes to events where I had been seated behind a flower arrangement and handed cold bread. I was not naturally the person who signals a staff member and says, "Play my file," but I had been that other person for long enough. The final remarks were announced. Nathan stood to speak. He talked about Priya with a warmth that was real and unguarded, and I felt something true and sad for him, because I don't think he knew. I don't think he understood what had been done in the margins of his life, in the emails his mother and my mother had exchanged, in the small strategic absences that had accumulated around me like weather. He loved his family. He loved them without auditing them. I used to be able to do that too. He finished. There was applause, and then I stood up. There was no microphone near table 11. I walked to the front of the room without one, past the center tables, past the people who looked up slightly puzzled, past my mother, whose expression shifted the moment she saw me moving toward the presentation area. I gave the staff member a single nod. He leaned toward his laptop. The photo loop stopped. A new file opened on the screen. The first thing that appeared was the email. My mother's name in the header. David Cho's name beneath it. The text zoomed in slowly, the way presentation software does when you set it to auto-advance. Personal instability. I wouldn't want that to affect your project. I heard the shift in the room. Not gasps exactly. More like the sound of attention refocusing. The sharp, particular silence of people realizing something is real. I spoke without a microphone. I don't have a loud voice, but I have a clear one, and the room had gone quiet enough. I've spent 12 years being described to other people before I had a chance to introduce myself. Difficult, unreliable, unstable. I want to show you what that actually looked like. The email dissolved. The voicemail transcript appeared, the one about the launch date, the one about the family's image, the one that cost me a referral I never got back. Below it, timestamped, the date of the family reunion I hadn't been invited to. Then the text thread. Priya's message. Does she have to come? Nathan's reply. Priya's response. I'm not redoing the whole layout for her. I heard Nathan's voice from across the room. Not angry, just stunned. Priya. She didn't answer. The final slide was a photo. It was the seating chart from tonight, photographed on my phone when I'd arrived. Table 11, tucked near the service corridor, circled. My name, which had eventually been added to the chart in handwriting, not printed like the others, was circled too. I looked at the room. I'm not here to ruin anything. I'm here because I spent a long time being told that my version of this family was a misperception, that I was too sensitive, that I was imagining things. I wanted you to see that I wasn't imagining anything. I was just the only one keeping receipts. I stepped back from the presentation area. The silence held for 3 full seconds. Then someone at table 4 started clapping. Slowly. Just one person. Then another. It wasn't thunderous. It wasn't a standing ovation. It was the sound of people who recognized something true and didn't know what else to do with it. Nathan was on his feet. He wasn't looking at the screen anymore. He was looking at Priya, and the look on his face was the particular expression of someone recalculating something they thought they understood. How long have you felt this way about my sister? Priya said his name. He said, How long, Priya? She reached for his hand. He didn't move his away, but he didn't close his fingers either, and in that small gesture was everything. My mother crossed the room in a straight line, heels sharp against the hardwood, and she stopped 2 feet in front of me and said, very quietly, "You just destroyed your brother's engagement party." I looked at her. I had rehearsed many things to say in this moment. In the end, I said none of them. "You described me as personally unstable to a client. In writing, while I was building my career from scratch after you arranged a job interview I never agreed to. I think the party was already complicated before tonight." She stared at me. "You always had to make everything about yourself," she said. "No," I said. "I just finally stopped making myself invisible so you wouldn't have to look." She left the room. My father, who had been standing near the bar this whole time, arms folded, watching, did not follow her immediately. He stood there for another moment. Then he walked toward me. I braced myself. He stopped beside me and said, without quite meeting my eyes, "I didn't know about the email." A pause. "That doesn't mean I handled things right. But I didn't know about that one." He touched my shoulder once, brief, awkward, the touch of a man who had forgotten how to reach his daughter and was trying to remember, and then he walked after my mother. I stood at the front of the room alone for a moment. The staff member had quietly closed the laptop. The engagement photo loop had resumed, Nathan and Priya smiling on a beach somewhere, the same image cycling through as if nothing had happened. I went back to table 11. Sat down. The other guests at my table had watched all of this in polite silence. The cousin of Priya's reached over and filled my water glass from a carafe on the table. She didn't say anything. It was the kindest thing anyone did for me all evening. The party didn't end. It slowed, the way parties do after something irreversible has happened. People moving quieter, voices lower, the music filling spaces that conversation couldn't. Nathan and Priya were together in a corner near the bar. I couldn't hear what they were saying. At one point, Priya was crying. At another point, Nathan had his hands in his pockets and was looking at the floor. I didn't gloat. I want to be clear about that too. I wasn't sitting at table 11 watching their corner of the room with any satisfaction. I had done what I needed to do. The thing about carrying something for a long time is that when you finally set it down, you mostly just feel the absence of weight. Not victory, just the strange lightness of a thing no longer pressing on you. I left before the dessert course, picked up my clutch, retrieved my laptop bag from coat check, walked to my car in the cold March air. I sat in the parking lot for a few minutes without starting the engine. The windows fogged slightly. I could see the lights of Rosewood Manor through the glass, warm and golden, the party continuing in my absence. My phone lit up. A text from Nathan. "We need to talk. Not tonight, but soon," I replied. "I know. I'll be here." Then a text from a number I didn't recognize at first. Then I did. It was Priya's sister. We'd exchanged numbers once at a bridal shower planning meeting I'd been included in, and then quietly uninvited from. She wrote, "I want you to know that I saw some things, and I'm sorry I didn't say something sooner. For what it's worth, you were right." I held the phone for a moment. I didn't need her to validate what I'd shown in that room, but there's something about being seen, truly seen, after years of being described before you can speak, that lands differently than you expect it to. Not as relief exactly. More like the quiet closing of a door you'd left open for too long. 3 weeks later, Nathan called me on a Sunday afternoon. He sounded tired in the way people sound when they've been doing the kind of thinking that costs something. He told me he and Priya were still together, but that things were different now. More honest, he said. He didn't say whether that was good or bad, and I didn't ask. He said, "I should have paid more attention to what was happening with you. I think I looked away because it was easier." I said, "I know." He said, "That's not an excuse." I said, "I know that too." There was a long pause. Then he said, "Can I come see your studio sometime? I don't actually know what your work looks like." I told him yes. I meant it. My mother called twice. I let both go to voicemail. The first message was the version of her that managed situations, brisk, practical, suggesting we agree on a shared narrative before Nathan's wedding planning resumed. The second was shorter and quieter, and she sounded, for just a moment, like the woman she was before she became the role she played. She said, "I don't know when I stopped seeing you as a person and started seeing you as a problem to manage." I don't have a good answer for that. I'm sorry. I didn't call back right away. I needed to sit with it, not to punish her, but because forgiveness that comes too fast isn't forgiveness. It's just conflict avoidance, wearing a different coat. What I did instead was open a new project file on my laptop, a rebrand I'd been postponing for 6 months. Too tired, too distracted, too much of my energy going toward being invisible in rooms that didn't value my presence. I opened it, and I worked for 4 hours straight. Clean lines, clear thinking, work that was entirely mine. I'm telling you this because I want you to understand something. The engagement party wasn't the end of anything. It was more like a door opening onto a hallway I'd always known existed, but hadn't had the courage to walk through. What's on the other side isn't perfect. My family is still my family, complicated and imperfect, and in some ways still learning how to see me. But I am no longer managing their comfort at the expense of my own. I was seated at table 11 for a reason. They put me near the service corridor behind a flower arrangement because they assumed I would stay there. They have been making that assumption about me for a long time. I am done making it easy for them. If something in this story sat with you, if you've ever been placed at a table where your name was an afterthought, if you've ever smiled through something you should have spoken through, if you've ever been described to someone before, you had a chance to speak for yourself, drop a 1-inch the comments. Tell me where you're watching from. I want to know you're out there. And if this story wasn't for you, tell me that too. This space is for real people and real things, and I'd rather know what's true than hear what sounds nice. Take care of yourselves.